The village of Hollow Creek was quaint. It was peaceful. It was also living under a curse. At least, that's what the whispers said. Looming at the edge of town, shrouded by gnarled trees and suffocating ivy, was Blackwood Manor. It stood as a monument to tragedy, a silent testament to forgotten horrors. The villagers knew its story. They knew every chilling detail. Blackwood Manor was more than just an abandoned house. It was a black hole of fear, sucking the joy out of anything that dared to get too close. Generations whispered tales of its darkness. They spoke of sudden disappearances, of chilling cries in the night. No one dared to approach the house. No one dared to even look at it directly. The manor cast a long shadow over Hollow Creek, both literally and figuratively. The fear was palpable. The sorrow hung heavy in the air. Even the sunlight seemed hesitant to touch the grounds, as if afraid of what it might find. It was a place where secrets lingered. They whispered on the wind, waiting for someone foolish enough to listen. Tom was different. He was new to Hollow Creek, his family having moved there only recently. He had not grown up hearing the whispers. He hadn't inherited the fear that clung to the villagers like a shroud. When the locals spoke of Blackwood Manor, their voices hushed and trembling, Tom felt a thrill of excitement. He wasn't afraid, he was curious. Tom saw the fear in the villagers' eyes when he asked about the manor. He heard the warnings in their hushed tones. They told him to stay away. They begged him to let the dead lie. But their warnings only fueled his curiosity. He was drawn to the mystery. He craved the truth. He decided to see for himself. He would be the one to unravel the secrets of Blackwood Manor. He would be the one to expose the truth, to free the village from the grip of fear. He announced his intentions to no one. He knew they wouldn't understand. He packed his backpack with a flashlight, a notebook and a camera. He was ready to face the unknown. The air grew colder as Tom approached the manor. The sun seemed to dim, as if swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The closer he got, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The whispers of the villagers echoed in his ears. Their fear was contagious, but he fought against it. He stood before the imposing iron gates, their metal twisted and rusted. They groaned as he pushed them open, a sound that seemed to echo through the silence of the grounds. The path leading up to the house was overgrown, swallowed by weeds and thorns. Each step forward felt like a step into the mouth of a beast. He reached the front door. It was massive and imposing, made of dark, heavy wood. He raised his hand and knocked. The sound was swallowed by the silence. Hesitating for just a moment, he gripped the doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch. He turned it slowly. The door creaked open. The air inside was stale and heavy. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that managed to penetrate the grime-coated windows. The smell hit him next. It was the smell of decay and neglect, of things long forgotten. It was the smell of death. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The house was silent, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of anticipation, of something lurking just beyond the shadows. The only sound was the beating of his own heart, loud in his ears. He pulled out his flashlight and flicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness. He started with the main hallway. Cobwebs clung to the walls like ghostly shrouds. Portraits of strangers stared down at him, their eyes hollow and accusing. The air was thick with the weight of unseen eyes, of whispers just beyond the range of hearing. He could almost feel the presence of something ancient and malevolent. Section 5. Reflections of Terror. He moved through the house, each room more unsettling than the last. He found a library with books scattered across the floor, their pages yellowed and brittle. He found a dining room with a table set for a meal that never came. Each room whispered its own tale of forgotten lives and tragic ends. He climbed the grand staircase, his hand trailing along the dust-covered banister. The whispers grew louder as he ascended, as if he were drawing closer to their source. He reached the second floor and paused, listening to the silence. It was then that he saw it. At the end of the hallway, a large, ornate mirror hung on the wall. It was covered in a thick layer of dust. but he could still see his reflection in its depths. But something was wrong. Standing behind him, her face pale and her eyes filled with a sorrow that chilled him to the bone, was a woman in a white gown. Section 6. Flight. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. The hallway was empty, there was no one there. He stared at the spot where the woman had been, his breath catching in his throat. Had he imagined it? He told himself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of his imagination. But deep down, he knew better. He turned back to the mirror. The woman was gone. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He told himself it was time to go. He had seen enough. He turned to leave, but as he did, he caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of his eye. He looked back at the mirror. This time, there was no mistaking it. The woman in white was back. She was closer now, her spectral hand reaching out from the mirror's surface. Her touch was ice cold, sending a jolt of terror through his body. He stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. He scrambled to his feet and ran. He didn't stop running until he was out of the house and back in the relative safety of the daylight. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could still feel the woman's cold touch on his skin. Her sorrowful eyes burned into his memory. He burst into the village square, his chest heaving and his clothes covered in dust and cobwebs. The villagers stopped what they were doing and stared at him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. They had seen the look on his face. They knew he had seen it too. He told them what he had seen in the mirror. He told them about the woman in white, about her sorrowful eyes and her icy touch. The villagers listened in stunned silence. When he was finished, an old woman stepped forward. Her face was etched with years of fear and regret. "She's real," the old woman whispered, her voice trembling. "She's been trapped there for years, ever since—" Her voice trailed off, lost in the memories of a tragedy long past. She refused to speak further, retreating back into the safety of the crowd. But Tom had heard enough. He left the village that day, his mind racing with questions. Who was the woman in white? What was her story? And why was she trapped in Blackwood Manor? He knew he couldn't stay in Hollow Creek. The memory of the woman in the mirror was too strong, her sorrowful eyes haunting his dreams. He tried to put the experience behind him, but the memory of that day lingered. The feeling of the woman's cold touch, the sight of her sorrowful eyes, it all stayed with him. He couldn't escape the feeling that he had been touched by something ancient and evil, something that he did not understand. He began to research the history of Blackwood Manor and the village of Hollow Creek. He scoured old newspapers, local archives, anything he could find. He learned that the manor had once belonged to a wealthy family, but they had disappeared without a trace decades ago. The only clue to their fate was a local legend. The legend spoke of a beautiful young woman engaged to be married to the son of a rival family, but their love was forbidden, and on the eve of their wedding, the woman disappeared. Her fiancé, driven mad with grief, searched for her for years, but she was never found. Some say her spirit still haunts the manor, searching for her lost love. Tom realized that the woman in the mirror was the missing bride-to-be. He understood now that she wasn't trying to harm him. She was trying to communicate, to warn him. He knew he had to help her. He had to find a way to free her from her spectral prison. He returned to Hollow Creek, armed with his research and a newfound determination. He knew it wouldn't be easy. The villagers were still terrified of Blackwood Manor and the woman in white, but he had to try. He owed it to her and to himself to set things right. Tom's encounter served as a chilling reminder for the villagers. Blackwood Manor was not a place for the curious or the brave. It was a place of sorrow, a place of regret, a place where some things are best left undisturbed. The woman in white continued her silent vigil, her sorrow echoing through the halls. She was a prisoner of her own despair, a cautionary tale whispered on the wind. The villagers of Hollow Creek continued to avoid Blackwood Manor, their fear a silent tribute to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. The manor remained a haunting reminder of the past and a chilling testament to the power of fear and the enduring nature of despair. The woman in white was not a malevolent spirit, but a tragic figure, forever trapped in her own personal purgatory. And Tom, forever scarred by his encounter, carried the weight of her sorrow, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface of the seemingly peaceful village of Hollow Creek.